My name's Russell Edgar. I'm representing the university. I work at the Advanced Structures and Composites Center. There really isn't a day that goes by lately that we don't receive some request, a phone call, an email asking about what's going on with mass timber. Is it viable in the state of Maine? There's companies that are interested in potentially locating here in the state. So we're serving as an information source for all these activities. I'll talk just very briefly about mass timber in general, in case there's anyone that's unfamiliar with it. I'll talk about something called the Maine Mass Timber Working Group, which is an ad hoc group that we've formed to keep momentum moving in the state, and then tell you a little bit about what we're up to at the university. Most of you have been to our facility. It's a 100,000 square foot R&D facility dedicated to composites research, development, and commercialization to help companies primarily in the state, but we work with companies throughout the country and nationwide, including Stora Enso. We've got about 100 students there. That's really our number one output from the laboratory is educated students that are ready to take over this new economy that we leave for them. We've got lots of testing capabilities at the center. I just showcase a few of the larger ones here since mass timber. We're talking about massive structures, massive buildings, and we have some massive testing equipment. So we've got a 230-foot long structural testing floor, for example, so we can test the largest CLT press I know about is 64 feet long, so we can test the largest CLT or mass timber panels that are produced anywhere in the world. Just as a quick update, last year I think I was telling you that we were in the process of doing testing related to Norway spruce and getting Norway spruce incorporated into the spruce pine fir south category. That was a success. It was included in that category back in October of 2016. Now we're continuing that relationship with NELMA, and we're doing periodic monitoring of the spruce pine fir south resource, which is required by the American Lumber Standards Committee. So we're going to finish that testing probably next week, do the analysis. They just want to make sure that there's no downward shift in the resource, which we all know, in our region at least, there's no reason to suspect that that's the case. But this all stemmed from the southern pine industry and what happened to them about 10 years ago, maybe 10 years now, where they took a 30% hit in design values, which is a major deal. So mass timber, when we talk about that, CLT is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Most of the mass timber that people are talking about these days is CLT, cross-laminated timber. But it's good to point out, and I'm constantly reminded, that mass timber has been produced for a very long time. There's nothing new about it. Glue-laminated timber, like these ones you see here, is mass timber. And nail-laminated timber, which is what you see here in the roof, is quite common as well, and potentially could be an easier, less expensive way to produce mass timber. I mean, nail-laminated timber, you're literally talking about laying up 2x8 side by side and nailing them together. It's as simple as that. So whether or not that's a more viable option for a manufacturer in the state or not is yet to be seen, but I think there'll be markets for many of these products going forward. And like I just said, there's a variety of different types of mass timber. There's also hybrid products. So every time we talk about promoting wood products, there's a stink that's raised by the concrete industry or the steel industry, and they're constantly competing. But there's no reason that hybrid systems can't be employed, where you engineer buildings to use the materials that are best suited for their particular location. So a perfect example is using concrete slabs on top of mass timber. Concrete can give you several important properties, acoustics being one of them, and compressive strength, and then the wood can give you the tensile strength, for example. So hybrid systems are something that we're very interested in looking at going forward. Some of you might know that the University of Massachusetts just put up a CLT building. It's actually a hybrid building. They've got concrete slab on top of wood. There's plenty of steel in that building as well. So steel, wood, concrete, all cohabitating and doing their jobs. That building's now completed. I haven't been there yet, but I've heard it's quite a nice structure. It's amazing, yep. So at the University of British Columbia, they just finished building an 18-story CLT building. So that's a dormitory that went up relatively quickly. So this is a perfect example of the type of project that we'd like to see here in the Northeast region. Tall mass timber, there's limitations of code. 85 feet is kind of the limit in the United States currently. This is all undergoing change, and in the next 10 years, I'm sure you'll see codes changing to incorporate opportunities such as this. There is a building going up in Portland, Oregon that's going to be 12 stories high called the Framework Building. So this is the more important update that I've got for you. We, in conjunction with several associations and manufacturers, architects, things like that around the state, got together and created an ad hoc group that we call the Maine Mass Timber Working Group. And the purpose of it really is just to keep us all coordinated on the same page, try to seize the opportunity, present a united front showing investors, capital venture folks that we've got an organized effort going on in the state. So we've been meeting monthly for the last couple of years, and we're going to keep this going. Many of you are familiar with the EDAT team, the Economic Development Assessment team that came to Maine, and one of their specific priorities in that report was to immediately form a collaboration of appropriate parties to promote the effort or the opportunity that mass timber presents. So that's exactly what we did, and further, we've applied for an EDA, they're part of the Department of Commerce, grant for about $450,000 that, if awarded, will allow us to really expand opportunities, provide funding for staff at the university and throughout the state that can really expand efforts in this area and try to bring mass timber to the state. At the bottom there, one of our members, Scott Simons Architects down in Portland, and Adam, I think you helped, this might have been your idea, but we had a meeting last week where we talked about having a mass timber design competition. So part of the struggle, I guess, is to get everyone aware of this opportunity, what it really means, get people talking about it, get architects understanding what it is. And so this design competition that'll be both for professionals and for students has that objective to really educate the public about the opportunity that mass timber presents for our state. At the university, we're really there to provide information and coordination more than anything, so that's what we're trying to do. We want to make sure that the Northeast is considered seriously when it comes to mass timber. We feel like it's an inevitable outcome, and that while demand, it's a chicken or an egg type of thing, the demand isn't quite there yet regionally, but we feel like it is coming, and Maine would be a perfect place for a manufacturing facility, especially to serve the eastern seaboard of the United States. So again, we're looking to coordinate, keep the momentum rolling, keep our wood composites laboratory as one of the potential draws for a CLT producer. We've had several of them come to the state, and most have mentioned that having a world-class facility that can test all of these materials is an important piece of their plan. So we want to put the university to use as well. And sometimes I forget, but we're there to educate students. That's our job. The mass timber industry is a little bit different than the historic industries in the state. Not that those didn't require highly educated students, but a lot of these companies are also providing engineering services, drafting services, things like that. They're going to require fairly highly educated workforce, which again is part of our role. So this is something I showed you last year, but we're continuing this research where we're incorporating both spruce, pine fir, and laminated strand lumber as a composite hybrid material. So not only can you hybridize these systems with wood and concrete, for example, but you can use different types of wood products. And it so happens that This material fails in shear, so that picture over to the left shows you a very typical shear failure in that core ply in the middle. So we've got systems that can visualize that during testing, and then if you incorporate this laminated strand lumber into the core, you get about a 25% increase in capacity. That's made in Holton, so there's a potential opportunity for more materials made in the state of Maine to be used in these products going forward. The standard that oversees mass timber, cross-laminated timber in particularly, is known as PRG 320 as the product standard. One of our employees at the center is on this committee. You'll see these grades. I think I showed you last year. There are 4 E-rated grades using machine stress-rated lumber. There are 3 and now a 4th visual grade, and we are currently working with SmartLam, the producer in Montana, to come up with 2 new grades, E5 and E6, which will be machine stress rated grades. We sent lumber from the mill here in Maine, 2 mills out to Montana. Those panels are going to be produced, and then we'll do all the product qualification testing at the laboratory. And that grade of lumber, one of them, E6, will have the highest allowable design properties of any of them on the table here, using species from the state of Maine. So again, we're projecting continued growth. Is Maine the right place in the Northeast for this type of activity? We sure think so. The Maine Mass Timber Working Group, we're going to continue growing. For those of you that are interested in that group, please talk to me afterwards or give me a call anytime. We're looking to expand. We don't want to get too big. We want to stay focused on bringing this opportunity, bringing a manufacturing facility to the state. That's really the end game, but we also want to support regional efforts as well. And again, my role really can be coordinating, keeping the energy going, and seizing on this opportunity for Maine.